Hello everybody and welcome to my studio. My name is Lonna and I am an acrylic artist. Thanks so much for stopping by to paint with me today. We're going to paint a fun little project that I hope that you all will enjoy. I was trying to go for a little bit more of a vintage style with this one. So I think it kind of got there, but I love it. I love it. I love the background. I love the soft pastel-y colors that I used in this design. It is just a fun project, and you can paint it on anything, but this particular surface comes from my website. It's my Chip and Dale plaque, and you can get that at lonnalamb.com. And I will be using Americana acrylic paints today. So I hope that you will paint along with me. You can use any paints that you want to use, but those are the paints I'm using. So grab your paints, your brushes, and your supplies, and let's get painting. Alright, I have this surface base coated. This is my Chip and Dale plaque from my website. I've applied one coat of multi-purpose sealer with a dampened 2-inch foam roller. You can use an artist sponge, you can use a paintbrush. Roller just goes on really fast. It does give it a little bit of texture, which I kind of like, and if you don't like that, then I recommend using an artist sponge. And then I applied 2 coats of bleached sand with the same 2-inch foam roller. So we've got it to this point. I lightly sanded it. Now I want to do some fun stuff to the background. I want to add some stenciling stuff into the background. So we're going to need our stencil brush. And there are many options. You can do whatever you want. You can leave the background just as it is and not put any stenciling in the background. You can do stamping in your background. You can decoupage in your background. I was going to decoupage paper onto this, but I have done that for several projects. Even though it's one of my favorite things to do, I decided to do something a little bit different on this background. So you have some options. We can use like some punchinella and add some really fun stuff in the background. Some drywall tape. Both of these I sell on my website. You get an 18-inch strip of it for $1. And these are really easy and fun to use on your projects. I have this Tim Holtz stencil, which is very similar to the drywall tape. Now this is an adhesive drywall tape. It's slightly tacky on the back, which makes it great for laying down and stenciling. But this Tim Holtz stencil is his burlap stencil you can get at decoart.com, but it's a really fun one to add some texture into your background. I like that. I really don't know what I'm going to use yet. I have a couple of what are these? Stencil art. These both came from Hobby Lobby. Some scroll stuff on both of them. This is a little bit bolder scroll stuff with some little flowers. But I really like both of these. You can see they've been used. I haven't cleaned them, but they will clean up just fine when I go to my sink. And then I have this one, which is the Crafter's Workshop stencil. Again, I believe I got this at Hobby Lobby, and I like that these are flowers. It makes me think of the spring. I wouldn't add the birds in there, but I do like some of the flowers in there. So I'm not really sure what I'm going to use. I think I'm actually going to start with this one and put some random stuff in there. I'm going to use one of the colors that's in our palette list, and this is Sable Brown. So I'm going to put a little bit out on my palette here. And grab a dry paper towel. I'm going to work some of that paint into my brush. So my brush is pretty loaded with paint right now. I want to remove pretty much all of the paint. I just want a little bit in there. I want this to be so subtle in the background. I can come in and add darker stuff, you know, as I build my background. But for now, I think I just want some subtle little fun stuff in the background. And see, even that's pretty dark, but how fun is that? So let's go over here and add some over here. And just have fun with your stencils, just doing this all over, you know, here and there randomly. I'm not going to put that flower in, but I really like this swirly thing right here. So I'll see if I can get that without hitting on that flower. And you see how light and subtle this is. It's going to make such a fun background. This one over here has a little bit different design on it, so I think it's super fun. I'm going to go crazy and do a really large area here. And I don't have hardly any paint on my brush. Okay, look at that. That is looking so fun, I'm telling you. So I think this is the last one of this stencil I'm going to do. I do want to add some other stencil stuff on here, but how fun is that? That is just looking fabulous already, and I haven't done hardly anything to it. I think I do want to add either my drywall tape or the Tim Holtz stencil. I think I'm going to use the Tim Holtz stencil. Grab that one out, put some of this on. I'm going to load some more into my brush and then offload as much as I can. I want this to be, again, really subtle and light. And let's just do some random fun stuff here. You could pick another color within the palette to add a second color into your background if you want to, but I think this is so fun. And just be as random as possible with it. Put a little bit up here in the corner. I think I am going to add some of that flowery one on here. Makes me think of spring. A little bit more on my brush. I'm going to go really light because I think I've got a lot of paint in my brush here. And so fun! I'm loving it. Loving, loving, loving it. Let's put a little here. And a little bit down here. Okay, I think that's pretty good for that texture of this. I can come back and add more if I want it or need it. The same with the other stencil. So I think for some more stenciling on here, I'm going to use this one. Sorry about that noise. I had years ago stuck some adhesive on the back of this, and so it's very loud when it comes off of the Alright, let's just add some fun little stuff in here. We've got a big pattern that we're going to be putting on here, so don't feel like you have to completely fill up your background, but have a little bit of fun with it. I do need a little bit more paint. Super fun. Let's add this little cluster of flowers. A little more paint to offload. I like this little cluster of flowers right here. I think it's really fun. So we'll put that in. And maybe a little cluster down here. This is all background stuff, and I know it looks like it's getting pretty full, but it's all going to push back. So don't worry too much. Just keep your layers in your background really light and subtle and fun, and I think that looks pretty good. I'm pretty good with that. I might add a little bit more of this burlap in here. Very subtle. Load my brush, offload. I like that really soft, subtle there. A little bit here. This is going to be such a fun design when we're done. So I really like that. Now I feel like I need to go back to my swirly stuff and add a little bit more of this in there. So just a little bit here and there. Again, this is background stuff. So don't get crazy. If you feel like I'm getting crazy, then don't do as much as I'm doing. Super fun. I want something right in here, I think. So let's just put a little swirl in there. Fun. A little swirl of some kind up here. And that's looking pretty good. I want another little swirl, maybe this one. Right through here. And then we're going to have our basket and everything. Let's see, let me bring my pattern over here because this is what we're going to be adding on top of this. Ignore the outside line drawing because I drew it for a different surface that I don't carry on my website anymore. But I'm going to make it fit this surface. So we've got our little chick and some tulips and a basket of Easter eggs. Just a fun little Easter design. So we've got our background the way that we like it. I hope it's the way that you like it. So now you have to decide if you think it is too bold for you. If it's too bold, we're going to make a whitewash and brush over that. So to make a whitewash, first I want to tell you about your stencil brush. Let's take our little, I have these little brush pucks that I sell on my website, and I like to use them for my stencil brushes to get the paint out of them. And when I'm using glitter, I like to rinse my glitter in with these. You don't need a lot of paint in your cup. It suctions down into the bottom of the cup, and this is going to get the majority of the paint out of my brush until I can go and clean it at the sink. So let me dry this off. I'm going to set this aside so that I can take it to my sink here in a little bit while my whitewash is drying and clean it. So I'm going to take my palette here, and I'm going to, now again, you could do this with a different color besides white. You know, you could do some other color on the background to wash over it. It doesn't have to be white. Grab a large brush here. I'm just going to use a large flat brush, and I want to thin my paint down here. I think I will spritz my palette with some clean water. I'm going to use this to thin my white paint down and make just a wash of it. Now you could use glazing medium to thin your paint down. You could actually use Deco Art's whitewash, the product that they have. But I wanted to keep this design more user-friendly since a lot of supplies are hard to get at the moment. I wanted to try and use colors and things that you may have on hand already, and try not to use anything super special for this. So let's grab our thinned down white paint with water. I've got a lot of water here, so it's mostly water, not very much paint at all, because you can come back and add more. I feel like I need more white in there. So I'm just going to add a little bit more white into my water, and then I'm going to come in and brush this over. You could use gesso and thin some gesso down, anything that you want to use. And this is going to help push that background back even further. You could come in and do a second layer on top to give your background more depth, and have some more on top of these after you whitewash them. You can come back and apply a second layer of whitewash which I might do that. I might apply a second layer of whitewash. I'm going to let this dry and see how it looks. It's already pushed it back. Now it almost looks like wallpaper on there. I like that. So I'm going to let it dry and see if it needs another layer of the whitewash on there. And then we're going to add our pattern lines onto this. Okay, my first layer is dry. I really feel like it could use a second layer of whitewash on here. So again, let me add a little bit more water on my palette here. Just using a spritzing bottle, a traveling spritz bottle to put some clean water on here. When you're using white paint, you don't want to use your dirty water because it will tint your paint and then it will no longer be white. It will be whatever color is in your water. So always thin your white paints with clean water. Now I'm liking that much better. That is really pushing that more back to the back, so it's not bringing that so far forward that all that stenciling we did on the background. How super fun to create such a fun background with this one. So another layer of whitewash, putting a little bit more white into my water here. So it's got a little bit more whiter value. I'm not sure what that is. I think I went all the way down to my surface there. Got a little chunk of something in my paint. Oh man, this is looking amazing. Love this. And you can do this kind of technique for any background, for any project that you're doing. I love that whitewash on there, pushing that back even farther. Wow, that looks so good. All right, so just the 2 layers of whitewash is all I'm going to do. I'm going to let this get dry, and then we're going to add our pattern lines on and get ready to start painting. All right, my background's dry. Looks really good. So I've got my pattern taped down, and I'm going to put my gray graphite underneath it. Now the lettering is up to you if you want to transfer it or even add it at all. I do have a stencil that has the lettering that matches this lettering. Happy and Easter is what I used here, but you can do it by hand as well. So just take your stylus and transfer on your main lines, and we're going to get ready to start painting. Okay, I'm starting my base coats, and I'm not going to show you how I paint everything in. I'll just go off camera and do it so we don't have so much repetition on stuff. But I just wanted to show you that even though I have stenciled and stamped lightly in the background and I applied that whitewash over, everything that I paint on top of it is going to cover the background design that we put on there. And even if it doesn't cover it, that's okay. I think it's part of the charm of the design is to have some of that background. If it shows through, I think that makes it even more beautiful and a more fun project. Okay, my moon yellow. I might have to get a different bottle. This one's not wanting to shake up too well. I'm going to paint my little chickadee in with some moon yellow. I painted my basket in with some toffee. My little baby chick here. And here we go. And the beak and the feet will be painted in a different color. They'll be Tangelo orange. But I just wanted to show you I can barely see any of that stenciling that I did behind there. Of course, that's only 1 coat. Everything will need 2 coats, probably. I don't know, this yellow went on pretty good. It may only need 1 coat. We have other layers coming on top of it, so if you can get by with 1 coat, and it's not too thin and see-through, then you will be good to go. So I'm just going to go off camera and paint in all of my other elements on here. And again, I'm using the Deco Art Americana paints on this project, but you can use any acrylic paints that you want. So I'm going to get my base coats on, and then we'll come back and get to adding some detail. Alrighty, all my base coats are on, so let me tell you what I use for my base coats. So my purples are all Wisteria. Remember, I'm using Americana, Deco Art Americana paints. Wisteria for all of my purple areas. My yellow areas are Moon Yellow. This is a mixture of Moon Yellow and Tangelo Orange. Beak and feet are Tangelo Orange. The leaves over here are Foliage Green. My pinks are Poodle Skirt Pink, Blue, Blue Haven. And then I have some colors over here I haven't never used before, so I thought this would be a good opportunity to try them. I have Sweet Mint, which is this one. This one is Pistachio Mint, and this one is Coral Shell. So some nice, really peachy, Eastery colors. And then of course my basket is painted with toffee. So we're going to get ready to work on our basket now, and this is a little bit different basket shape than I've done in the past. I did go in and erase the majority of my graphite lines off of here that I could really see or get off. So you want to make sure that you do that when you get done with your base coats and they're all dry. Just don't make sure your eraser shavings go away from your paint. And then I also added some lines for my ribbon and stuff so I would know where I'm going, and some lines on my basket. So let me zoom you in just a little bit on my basket. So this basket will be a little bit different. I'm going to make this piece right through here like a wood piece, and I might change the color of it. I haven't decided, but this is all the woven part of the basket here, and so we're going to start on that. And I'm going to be using an 8 chisel flat brush. Chisel has shorter bristles than a regular flat brush, and I'm going to side load for a float. You can use a 1/4 inch angle brush would be a good one, and I want to separate all of my lines that I put on here. These are my can't remember what reed. These are my reeds that go down through the basket, and so I'm just going to kind of put those in. And I'm using sable brown here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go up here to my my edging up here. I want to this edging up here is going to be a little bit darker, so I'm going to take some sable brown and just kind of bring it across here. I still just have my brush loaded for a float. Got a little bit too much water in my brush, I think. And then I'll come across here. I want this banding up here, the handles and the banding at the bottom to be darker. So I'll go ahead and do the banding. Or I guess this would be the bottom of the basket. Not necessarily the banding, it's the bottom of the basket. And I'll go ahead and take this color and shade where my ribbon comes over. I'm also going to shade next to where the handle connects to the basket part. And I'm going to do a little bit down the edges. I'm just up on the very tip of the brush here, just letting it kind of skim along that edge. It's loaded for a float, so that makes the paint very easy to move. And then I want to make this handle, while I'm working on it, I'm going to streak some of this through here to make it look a little bit more like a wood handle. And I'm going to do the same thing to this piece here. Just streak some lines. You can get a detail liner and do this with a liner as well in the outside edges here. Alright, let's come back down to our basket part. We'll leave the handle for now. And now I want to make sure which side my paint is on. I'm going to float along my reed here. And hopefully I'm keeping that fairly straight. Not super straight here. See if I can straighten that up. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go underneath this edge. This is just going to be kind of a more easy, fun basket. Nothing that you have to work too hard to get it to look like a basket. Go along here. It's looking super cute already. Go around my little ducky here. I'm going on each side of my reed sections that I have here. Alright, I'm going to do the outside edge of the basket. We're still just with sable brown. I'm going to walk that in just a little bit. I've got to figure out what I want to do with this section here. You can see right here I didn't get that very straight, so let me clean that up. That's looking pretty cute just with that first little float of color. I'm going to go along the bottom as well, up on the very edge of the brush. So we're getting a super cute little basket here. We're going to come in and darken some stuff here in a minute. I want to make these reeds that go down through the center a little bit wider, so I'm going to float on the other side of them as well. This is what's called a back-to-back float. But my other float is dry, so it's not going to blend in with that one that I put on there initially. These down here didn't look very dark. I'll just darken them up a little bit. Still working with this sable brown here. That's looking pretty good. I think I'm actually going to get a small round or a detail brush here for this. Oops. And I think I'm going to get, oh goodness, and brushes and paint everywhere. I'm just going to get a small little round. This is a 5-0 liner. I'm going to thin some of my paint here. Some of my brown paint with some water. I want it to be able to flow off of my brush easily. So a little bit of water mixed in with that paint will give it a nice inky consistency. And I want to put some big. That's kind of big. Stay up on the tippy toe of the brush. I'm going to go this way first, and then I'll flip my spinning table around here and go from the other side. Just putting on some wood grain look here. A little bit more water. Flip it around this way and come from the other side. Super fun. Put a few through here. And I'm thinking I want the handle and this part of the basket to all be a little bit darker than what it is. So that was all just done with sable brown. I still haven't decided what I'm going to do with this area right here yet. Alright, I want to darken a few places on my basket with some burnt umber. I definitely want this edging at the top to be darker. I want it to look different than the rest of the basket. So I'm just using some burnt umber and going along the top and the bottom edge, and then I'm going to streak some of this through here because I want it to just look darker. That's pretty darn dark. I will tap that along that bottom edge. Let's darken right here. Where the handle comes into the basket, I want it to be a little bit darker. Pull some of that up into the handle. A little bit here, here. I also want to do the bottom edge. Get a little bit of water. So I want it to be dark as well. And then we'll take a little bit of burnt umber and go along here. And then we're going to go along the outside edges here. I might walk that in just a little bit. Go around our little chickadee. Not too much right there. Go along this edge. And walk it in just a little bit. Okay, so for this area right here, we're still going to highlight on our basket yet, but I want to figure out this area right here. And I'm thinking right now that I want to put some lines across here. And I was thinking maybe I would use a color within our palette, but now I'm thinking I just want to use some white. So let me put some white out. I'm not going to do a lot to this, but I do want to define it. So I'm going to take that same round brush that I was using a moment ago, and I'm going to line across the top here with my white. Oops. Got off course. You gotta look where you're going so your paintbrush will follow your eye. That's a little bit too much paint. Alright, I got a couple of lines there. Now I think I'm just going to do some fun little scroll work in here. Well, that's not scroll at all, so, and it's way too big. I want it to be much smaller than that, so I'll just take that out with a damp brush. And I shall try that again. So just have fun with it. Just make some fun little designs in here. I think I'll put some dots in here. You can just create your own little design here. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. Just have fun. And then some more dots. You might see one little piece of a dot over there. And then I'm going to put some dots here. Some dots here, and some up here. Just make it as fun as you want. Okay, that's pretty fun. Something a little bit different on there, and that's just with some white paint, so just be creative. Just be creative and have fun. Okay, we're going to start doing some highlights on here now. Toffee is what we painted it in with, so I think I'm going to take some toffee and some white and mix that together. I'll just do a 1-to-1 mix right here. And then I'm just going to dry brush a little highlight on here. Nothing super big, just a little bit. Something, something. Put some through the handle. I'm going to go a little bit more toffee in the mix because we do need a highlight through here. This is really dark, but I think I want this edge up here to be a little bit lighter as it comes into those fun little eggs. And this is just dry brushing. It's nothing super, I'm not putting down hardly any paint onto the surface here. And then for some more detail, you can come in with a little bit of the toffee and white mix and add some highlights in here. Just a few. It needs to be that mix because if you keep it the toffee, you probably won't see the highlights because that's what color we base coated in with. Ooh, that's a big one. Let's do some this way. Just a couple. This is just highlighting that wood grain a little bit. We don't need a lot of this detail in there. Just a fun little basket is all we're making here, something different. I do want to darken the outside edges and the edges on my handle. I'm going to use some burnt umber. Really work that into my brush. Around my little cheek. Alright, I'm going to do my handle, the edge. I'm just on the tip of the brush there. Each side of the handle with some burnt umber. Stay up on the tip of the brush and glide it right along. Just kind of a chop, chop, choppy little motion. Put a little bit more down here. Here. And then I need to go up this other side. And I think we'll probably be done with our basket. And I think it gives us a fun, cute little basket. So I'm going to call that basket done. It really was a super easy. I wanted to keep it fairly easy so you didn't have to worry about putting so much detail into your basket. Just a few shading lines is all we did. And how fun was that? Super fun, super easy. I love it. Okay, our basket is done. I think it is super, super cute. Now you could use any other color you want in here besides white, but I felt like we needed to bring some white into it somewhere. I've just drawn some random lines on my eggs. I don't know that I'll follow them or anything, but I want to paint our eggs in before we do any shading on them. So let's get those finished up. One thing that I do want to do on my orange one here is I want to take a little bit of that Tangelo orange and darken a couple of sections on here, and then I'm going to add some designs clean off of my basket there. I'm just using a filbert brush. A round brush probably would have worked a little bit better here. So that's what I want to do to that one. I want it to get dry before we do anything else. So I'm going to move on to another Easter egg, and I think I'll start with this blue one here, and I've got a darker blue here. It's Blue Harbor, and I think I'm going to use some of this color and paint some lines in on our egg. Up there, and I'll put a couple down here. And I want to add some other detail stuff in there as well. So I'm going to go with some white. And I just drew some squiggly lines on here. You can decorate your eggs any way that you like. And make them really super fun. Actually, I want to keep the white on my brush. And make some dots in here. And I think I'll add some dots of blue in here by my white lines. Now I probably need to go over those white lines a second time because they're not going to stay very bright. So there's our blue egg, and let me see if I can go over that white line without getting into my blue paint. Not enough paint. So that's a fun little one for the blue egg. And like I said, you can do whatever you want, add whatever colors you want onto your eggs. This one's going to have little flowers on it. So I'm going to grab a different brush here. See if I can do it with this one. I'm not sure. This is a 1/8 inch angle brush. I mean, it's a little. So on my green one, I think I want to put some gold flowers. And you can come in and add glitter paints to these. Metallic paints would be fun. Piece of maybe a flower coming over here, or maybe one coming off the edge over here. Let's just be a little bit creative here. So we got some little flowers on that one, and I might come back and add more to that after the flowers get dry. I want this process to be fairly fast. I don't want us to spend a lot of time on the eggs like I didn't want us to spend a lot of time. Now you can spend as much time on them as you want, but I'm trying to do everything so that we're not spending a whole lot of time. I'm going to add some pink little diamonds in here on this purple egg. This is watermelon slice, this color I'm using here. Okay, so I'm going to do some lines. I'm going to do a line on each side of this. I need to connect to my diamond here. This side. super fun. I'm going to come in and add a white line next to that pink line. And then I'm going to add, I think, a green line. And then maybe a yellow line. Let's see what the yellow line does here. And again, you can do whatever you want to your egg. I'm going to take my dark purple, and I think I'm going to outline my diamonds with my dark purple. I think some dots are in order. Didn't quite make that white line straight, so I'm going to remove it and repaint it. Go. Now I can add some dots in here. I'm just going to go with the dots in between every line that I made. And when you're making dots, you want to make sure that they all dry before you come back and do any of your shading and highlighting. So I'm going to leave that one there. Alright, for this orange one over here, I'm going to outline those sections that I painted on there with some white. Clean up off my basket here. In this section, I'm just going to put white little polka dots. And maybe on the top section as well. Super fun. We could put something in the orange section if we want to, but I think I'll just leave it. I'm going to try and keep it not too crazy. Alright, I'm going to do some purple on here. Just jagged little lines. And I'm going to use my watermelon slice and come in with a couple of lines. White line up here. We won't be able to see the second white line up here, so we'll just keep it one white line. I'm going to go in and dot the center of my flowers here now. Let's add some pink in there. Let's make them super fun. Okay, so these over here, for my purple one, I think, Let's add some. Okay, I'm not sure what I want to do on the purple ones yet, so I'm going to go over to this one over here. I just made some ovals on this one, and I think I'll put a few colors on here. Just going to randomly pick some colors and paint them on here. Just little ovals. I'm not worried too much. You can get as much detail on this as you want. That one seems pretty bright for an Easter egg, so I might have to tone that down. Okay, this one has stripes on. I still don't know what I want to do on my purple one yet. So I'm going to take a orange. I think I'll mix my two oranges. I have Georgia Clay and Tangelo, and I'm just going to do an equal mix of these two. Give them some fun little stripe things. And then of course my little white dots. I think I'm going to add a row of dots up here. Maybe 2 rows of dots. Maybe even 3 rows of dots. And I feel like this needs some dots in here. I'm just all about the dots on this design, it looks like. Let's put some lines in here. And then I'm going to come back with some dots. Maybe, maybe not. Some pink dots down here. Some white dots here, and some more pink dots up here. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, so for my purple one, I think I'm going to go with yellow, maybe. And I want to create some scallops on here. I'm going to turn it this way. And I think it's going to be white because I feel like I need to have white on all of these. I'm going to put some white in here, right here, and then I want to make some teardrop things coming up. Something like that. And because everything else has dots on it, I think I'm going to put a few dots on here. So now we just want to let all of our eggs get dry so that we can shade on them. And I think they all look cute. This one is extremely bright, so I think I'm going to be taking some of those colors down. So I'm going to take the color that I made the circle with and add some white to it. make that not so bright. Really, they're ovals, but I'm not sure how well the oval look turned out. So in my instructions, we'll have to mix some white with that blue and that watermelon slice color that I put on there. I think this one might be a little too bright as well, so I'm going to take that pink color. Watermelon slice and white, it's about an equal mix here. I need a little bit more watermelon slice. I don't want it to be as bright as it was, but I don't want it to be all chalky either. If I have to come back in and paint my purple lines around it, I can do that. It looks like on a couple of them I do need to touch that up. Hope you're on camera for that. Probably not. It's been a while since I've done a videotape, so I've got to get back into the habit of looking up and seeing where I'm at. I don't want y'all yelling at me. Although I totally deserve it if I'm off camera. Okay, that looks better. Alright, just some fun little eggs. I mean, once we start shading on them and stuff, it's going to push a lot of that design that we put on there towards the back, so we won't have to, you know, worry if something's too bright or not. Alright, we're going to start working on shading all of our colors. So I'm going to move around my design, but my instructions will be written so that I tell you how to do just the eggs, just the bow, just the tulips and the leaves. But if I'm shading one color, like the purple egg here, I'm going to go over and shade the purple tulip and the purple bow all at the same time. So let's just start with shading on our purple. So we have a purple egg here, purple tulip, and our purple bow. So we're going to shade with some Purple Rain. And I'm going to use a chisel brush, but you can use an angle brush. And if you need to redraw any of your lines on your tulips, like to tell where your petals are, I'm not really sure what petals are what here, but you can, you know, put some lines in there and add those in. So I'm going to side load some Purple Rain for a float, and up here on the bow we're going to start on it. Try to zoom you in just a little bit. Hopefully I won't get you off camera. I'm going to go up underneath this line. This is the inside of the bow, so it will be the darkest area. And the inside of this loop. Okay, I'll do these two loops over here. We're going to do here where the bow is behind, and down here where we got the little fold starting. Go underneath this loop. Make sure you're dry down here. I wasn't dry, so you can see I went right through that float and I removed it. So let me put it back in. These over here are dry, so I'm safe to go over here and shade underneath this loop. We'll shade next to our bow, our knot. And we can pull a little bit of lines out on that as well. Okay, we'll go here where this one goes over. And when I touch it with my finger, I'm just softening that float. Get the same effect as if you use a mop brush. So then we have it folded here. So a little bit in that crease. We have another crease over here. So we'll make this edge the more dark edge here. Going into that, and then we'll shade along this edge and around this leaf. Through there. And then up here on this one, we're going to shade on this edge. Right here. And then this one will shade along this edge. And then we're going to stay along this edge here. So just a soft little shading of this purple. I'm not using a lot of paint. I don't want it to get too in your face there. So that's just our first layer of shading there on our bow. Put a little bit here. I see a spot where I need to do some. Okay, so now we're going to go on to the purple eggs. And I'm going to load my brush for a float. And float right on this egg. And it's in front of this one, so I'm not going to, and it's in front of this one, but it's behind this one. So we'll just start there with our float. And then this one down here, we're going to float along the bottom and come along the back a little bit. I want to walk that up onto the egg. And then we're going to go do our tulip. Oh, paint on the wrong side of my brush. And we're going to separate our petals. So we've got this petal back here. Get a little bit more paint on my brush. So we're going to separate there. And then this one's actually going to come a little bit higher here. And then this one comes down in front here. We'll do at the base of the tulip. Bring it up a little bit. And you can see I've drawn my stem right there. It doesn't quite meet the tulip where it should, so I'm just going to erase that line right there, and then when I paint it in, it will all be good. Okay, so that was with our purple on our egg, our bow, both of our eggs, our bow and our tulip. Okay, I want to go back and deepen, and I'm going to do another layer of just this purple and see how well it works out. I want to try and keep these colors very soft and pastel-y. I don't want to get them too incredibly dark. I do want to do out here on the outer edges of my loops though. So let's come out here and do these. And I'm going to go over the same places that I did, but just not as big an area. Second float should always be a little bit smaller than the first, a little bit more controlled. You're just getting those really deep areas. And let's go out here and do these outer edges of these loops. Okay, go underneath this one. I'm kind of up on the toe here because that's really narrow. I don't want to lay my brush flat and put down a lot of paint. I want to keep it kind of narrow, and we can kind of flatten it as we get over here. And with this one we can start it out a little more flat and then lift up and up on that toe as we come across here. Next to our knot, pull some lines out. And the bottom of the knot. And let's work on our bow here, our ribbon part of our bow. So right here, I'm up on the very tippy toe, just kind of scrubbing some in. We want to see a definite line between the two, so there should be a light line right there. And I'm going to bring that all the way down. And then I'm just going to go in the center on this longer area. And then right up to the turned part. And a little bit outside my lines here. Just erase that away, and then we're going around and I might put a little bit right here to make that look a little more bent over. And let's go over to the other ribbon. And we're going to go right here. And next to our handle on each side. I definitely want this to be a little bit wider here. Walk that over. Okay, so that is the second float on our ribbon. I'm going to do a second float on the egg. Right down in here we want it to be the darkest, so that's a V. Let's push the paint down in there and then round it out, and we'll come up along this blue egg and we'll go next to this orange egg. And then down here on the bottom, darken mostly along that bottom, and then pull some up into the egg. And then our tulip gets our second float here along the base. And then in our areas where we separated all of our little petals. So that's looking really good. I might bring a little bit more of this up this way and this way, just to give my egg a little roundness there, not make it look quite so flat. Now this egg here, I'm going to refer to it in my instructions as my teal egg. So when I talk about my teal egg, I'm talking about this one back here, because it's a little bit of a blue-green color. Okay, so that is our shading on our purple. 2 layers, same color, Purple Rain. So let's add some highlight. Highlight is just going to be done with white. And do it the same way. We'll do it one time and then we'll come back and brighten in a few key areas. And I'm not loading a whole lot of paint on my brush, and I'm not going to have a lot of water in my brush because I don't want this to really fade out into nothing. I'm going to go along those edges, along the top. I'm up on the toe of the brush in a lot of these areas, keeping this kind of more thin. Just going to pat some up along the edge there, and I think I'll pat a little bit up onto these, make them look a little more like satin. And we'll come back and repeat all of these. So there's a little tiny bit of a highlight right here. And then along this edge. So that's one side of our ribbon. So let's go along and do this side. This is just a small area right in there. And this has just a small area. And this is turned here, so we're going to start up here on that folded edge, just lightly drawing the corner of my brush down that. And then I'm going to come down this edge. Okay, so that is the first layer of white on our ribbon. So let's add some white onto our egg. Just along that top edge. And that probably could be getting some shadow from behind that basket, so technically we'd probably just have a highlight right here. So I might go in and change that. I'm not 100% sure yet, so let me work on the flower over here. And we'll highlight with some white and form the tips of your petals here. Now this white is going to fade down in there a lot, so it's looking pretty good. Let me figure out what I want to do with this egg down here. Okay, so I'm going to shade like down here at the tip. I had originally left the tip open and a little bit more at the back. So I've just got a small section right through here that is going to be highlighted. So I'm going to get all the moisture out of my brush and pick up some white. And I'm going to highlight along this section right here and pull it in onto the egg in a triangle fashion. That means it's almost like a bullseye float, only I'm not making a circle, but I'm keeping the paint always towards each other and just walking it out into a triangle shape. Okay. Alright, so we want to repeat all of those. So let's grab our white. We'll start up here at our ribbon. This outer edge. Remember, you're not doing as big of an area. Just like the centers of what you put down previously. We're not going to do the entire float that we did before. We're just making the brightest shine marks now. Fresh paint is best for this as well. Just small areas. And I do have to reload quite frequently. With fresh paint. This little area here, just a little bit. Okay, I'm just looking over my bow to see if it looks good with the shading and highlighting on it. I think it's looking pretty good. I'm going to add a little bit more brightness to my tulip just on the very tippy toes. And then we'll do our eggs. Again, this one is the walking in of the V. And this one's going to be at the very tippy top of this egg. And I think I might go in and highlight on that yellow that's in there, just a tiny little bit of white. And that'll help that pop again. Don't want my dots to disappear, so I want to make sure they're still being seen. And then all of my little drops that I did here, I'm going to load my brush with white, and then I'm going to load the tip with wisteria. Maybe if I can get some to come out of the bottle. There's some really thick paint. So I'm loading with white, tipping into wisteria. I think I'll touch my paper towel so I don't have a ton of paint here. And I'm going to pull these back because I feel like even though that's shaded down in there, we still want to see those colors right there. Okay, so I think the purple is looking pretty good. I feel like though that a couple of places could be darker. So I think I'm going to have to mix some burnt umber with some of my purple. See if I can darken it just a tiny bit. Tiniest little bit of burnt umber mixed in with your purple. I want this area right here to be darker. And I want down here to be darker. On this particular edge. So it's probably 2 purple to 1 burnt umber there. The purple rain and burnt umber mixed. And let's give this a little bit of darkness here. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. Now these little V areas, they're the darkest areas, so you got to make sure that they look like they're in the shadow. If you feel like you lose too much of your purple, you can always do a little wash of your base color onto it. But I think mine looks pretty good. I'm happy with it. So, you know, I darkened there and at the base here and along here, a little bit tucked in there, and along the bottom and these lower areas here. I didn't do any to my bow. I'm going to leave my bow as it is. I'll check it when I get done with the eggs, and if I feel like the values don't balance out, then I may come back and add just a tiny bit of that mix of burnt umber and purple like into some really dark areas. But for now, I think my bow looks pretty good. So we are going to move on to the next color. All right, let's move on to the pink egg and the pink tulip. And we're going to be shading this with watermelon slice. It's a very pretty color. It's transparent. I'm going to mix a little bit of water in, get a nice soft sheer float here. And we'll go next to this teal egg and next to our green egg. And so we have a V right here. Let's push the paint in, round it out. We want to make sure our egg looks round. And we'll go next to our handle just a little bit. We want to make sure we still see that white line, so if you don't see it, take the paint off or come back with your white and put your white back on. Okay, let's go over and do our pink tulip. So we've got a couple of petals back here. I just laid my hand in that. I'll put that back on because I laid my hand right in it. I laid my hand right in that. Alright, so I'm going to turn this upside down so I can do it this way. We've got a petal there. And then this one comes across here. Right now we're just defining petals and the base of the tulip. Okay, so we can kind of see where our petals are now on that particular tulip. We want it to dry. Okay, so mine is dry now. So let's go back with another layer of this. Just a little bit here. And another layer on our tulip. And just kind of walk that up into the tulip. Get this edge over here. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, on this one I'm going to highlight with a mix of our poodle skirt pink and white first. I felt like on my purple one the white got too bright too quick, so let's do an equal mix of poodle skirt and white. And I'm going to go along this edge. And I just want it to be along that edge. I don't want it to be down into the egg anywhere. We're going to come back with just white. And I think that's going to give us a much better transition. This one over here I might come in with some of the wisteria is it wisteria? Yeah, wisteria and white mixed. And kind of work that into the flower a little bit. So it doesn't look quite so white. Okay, and then we're going to do it with just white. Just a final white little highlight right along this edge. And you could use a detail liner for this if you wanted to. Keep a nice little white line right there. Soften out each end of it. I want to keep it kind of tight on that edge there. And then we'll do the tips of our tulip over here, and our pink will be done. I want this to stay a pretty cute but easy project for you guys. A little tiny bit right there. Okay, that should finish our pink out. That was super fast and easy. Of course, we only had a couple of things that were pink, so it didn't take a whole lot to do those. All right, let's start on our blue egg and our blue flower. We're going to shade with Blue Harbor. A little bit of water in my brush to get a nice thin layer here. We're going to go here. Now this is a V, so let's push it in, round it out, come along the edge of the basket, and bring it up into the egg just a little bit. That's going to have to come up a little bit more into the egg, but I'll do that with the second float. And then out here on our tulip, I'm going to create the separation of our petals. And then go along the base of it. See, I'm just kind of pity-patting that in there. Okay, that looks pretty good. We need it to dry so that we can apply a second layer on there. Okay, mine's dry. I'm going to apply a second layer onto my egg here. And I want to pull it into the egg a little bit more. Make it look like it's really kind of tucked down into that basket. Alright, then you can come over here on your tulip and darken it just a little bit. And I think I'm going to want it right there next to this rim to be just a tiny bit darker. So again, I'm going to mix a little bit of burnt umber in with my blue. And I'm trying to get some burnt umber in here. I'm trying to sneak up on it, so just a tiny little bit of burnt umber at a time. I don't want this to turn dirty. I just want a little bit of darkness down in there. Need a little less water, I think. Okay, don't let it get too dark. You're just adding a very small amount. You can skip that step altogether if you want to. If you feel like it's just making it too dark or dirtying up your egg too much, so you can skip that step. So let's add some highlight on here. So we're going to take our base color, which is Blue Haven, and mix the white with it. So we'll do that equal mix, or actually, let's do, yeah, let's just do an equal mix. I think that's what I did on the other one. So we'll just do an equal mix here. And you're just doing the tips, remember. And then over here on this egg, let me get my mix. I need a little bit more on my brush for my egg here. I'm going to go along this edge, or try to go along this edge, up on the tippy toe, keeping it kind of narrow. I think I'm going to come back and shade that lower edge of the egg right here a little bit more. Bring it up just a little bit more on that egg. And then I can put that highlight over here a little bit. I've removed a lot of the moisture out of my brush. Along that edge there. I want that to dry really good because I want to put just white along that edge. Okay, I'm going to add my brightest little highlight on my blue egg here. I'm just going to use a liner because I really want it to be right on this edge. And I may need to come back and repeat that. Let's put a little bit out here. And then I'm going to brighten the highlight on my blue tulip with some white. Just the tippy tops. No water in your brush, just white paint. I mean, your brush is damp. It should always be damp when you're using it, unless you're dry brushing or dry rubbing. So there is our blue tulip. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the yellow egg, because I'm going to do the yellow tulip and the yellow egg. I'm not going to do the chicken, even though it's yellow. I'm going to wait and do it completely by itself, so I'm just going to do these two. Alrighty, let's work on the yellow ones with antique gold. Now this is a very small area. So we don't want to get too carried away. I'm going to start over here on my tulip with some antique gold. These are small areas, so be up on the toe of your brush and put small amounts in here so it doesn't take over your whole area. Alright, so on the egg here, we're going to go around this orange egg, kind of up on the toe. Don't want it to take over my whole egg back here. And then next to the handle here, I'm really just using the very corner of the brush, just kind of dabbing that in there, not letting it get too I'm not trying to fill up the whole egg, what's left of the egg there. So I'm going to come back and repeat. Same way with your tulip. You don't want it to fill up your whole tulip. And just little dabs of paint right there. Don't get crazy. I may come back in and put my orange lines back on that just a little bit. We want the shading there. We want to see our lines. We want to tell that everything is as it should be. Okay, just a little bit. Tiny little bit there. Okay, so now I need to let that orange dry before I can do that one. But we're going to highlight with our base color mix, which is Moon Yellow and Snow White mixed together. Man, my paints are like thick. I'm going to do an equal mix here. Moon Yellow and White. And do a little bit on my tulip here. Again, I'm just using the corner of the brush here. Just giving a little brightness to the tulip, but I don't want to fill in my whole tulip. And then over here on my egg, I just want to go along this edge here. I need a little bit more white in the mix. Right along that edge, and then I'm going to come back with just white. And I think I'll use my liner brush on my egg there. Just a touch. The tiniest of amounts here. Okay, then I'll get my liner and do it on the egg. Edge of the egg here. Get my white to come off my brush. That's pretty bold there. Take that down just a little bit. But I think I'm going to do that on these other eggs. I like that little bit of a bolder highlight, but I still want it to remain narrow. So that looks pretty good. Okay, now we'll just finish up these other eggs in here. This will be done separate from this egg as well, my flower pot over here, because I'll be using some different colors on that. So we're going to do our orange, our teal, and our green eggs. So let's just go to our teal egg in the back there and work on it. Okay, so my teal egg back here, I'm going to try and mix a color so that I don't have to get another color out. So I'm going to take my Blue Harbor and my, well, let's see. I want it to be a bluish green color, so let's go with Blue Harbor and a little bit of avocado. I want it to stay on the blue side. Maybe just add a tiny bit of the base color in there. Oh, that's way too dark. Way too dark. I want it to be, that's a nice color for that, but that's way too dark. So let's go with our base color, which is Sweet Mint. So I'm going to show you here on camera. Okay, I'm going to add some Blue Harbor into it to get a blue. I've got a little bit too much moisture in my brush. And I'm going to add the tiniest little dot of the green in there. So it's mostly our base color with the Blue Harbor. Let's see how this looks. That's better. And it's a pretty sheer layer. You saw how much water I had in my brush there. So I work that over onto the egg quite a ways. That needs to dry. So while it's drying, I'm going to go to the green one here, and I'm going to take my base color, which is Pistachio Mint. Is that what it is? Yeah, Pistachio Mint. And I'm going to mix it with my avocado. moisture out of my brush. And then we'll just make a dark green here. That's a V. Let's roll it out, or round it out. And then just a little bit on this side of our handle, and then you can see we have a little bit of the egg peeking out on this side of the handle as well. I want to make sure we put a little bit. I was really up on the toe of my brush there. That was, the mix again is avocado and our base color. Just a little bit of avocado mixed into that base color to darken it slightly. Okay, and then on our orange one here, we're going to use burnt orange. No, Georgia clay. Georgia clay is the color I have. We use Tangelo orange in the egg itself. So this is Georgia clay. And we're going to shade. Trying to stay off of my basket edge there. I'm using a very sheer float here because I don't want it to take over my egg. I would rather do light layers and come back and repeat. Get it too dark to begin with, you have nowhere to go. You can't adjust it. So always be aware of that when you're applying your paint. Even if you feel like you're putting on a transparent color, you are probably putting on some color. So that's pretty light, but I like the way that it looks. So let's go back over here. That should be dry. That's our mint, our sweet mint and Blue Harbor. And the tiniest little dots of the avocado. And I just brush mix. I don't worry about mixing up a whole lot. Round that out. I'm going to have to make that just a tiny bit darker in there. So a little tiny bit more green right here in this little V. Barely tickling the bristles of the brush across that, just barely. Okay. Alright, let's go to this one, which is the avocado and our base color. I feel like straight avocado would be too dark, so that's why I am mixing this. Up along that handle edge right there, on each side of it, the very tippy toe of that brush. You're almost lining that, okay? Okay, I think I'm going to come back in with some of my yellow here and brighten up those flowers. Just scrubbing a little bit of that antique gold back on there, popping them forward a little bit. Okay, that's good enough. All right, back over to our orange one with our Georgia clay. That's a lot of paint. Wipe it off and then just reblend. Get too much on your brush, just wipe it off on the paper towel. No need to wash it, just wipe off the paint and then go back and reblend where you were blending. I'm going to add a tiny bit of brown in there, which is burnt umber for this dark area here. And I should wait till that dries. That's not quite dry. So let's get that dry first. Alright. Let me try that little darkening right here again with some Georgia clay and a little bit of burnt umber. Right there, and then I'm just going to scoot it along that basket edge right there. And that looks pretty good. Okay, so our highlight again will be our base color and white mix, an equal mix. And we'll just go along the top edge, a little bit more white in there. If you can't see your highlight, add just a tiny bit more white. You may have put a little bit too much of the base color in, and it might be too close to the egg color, so you may not be able to see it. And then we'll go to our next one, and our base color and white. And we're going to go along here. And this outer piece that's sticking out, let's put a little bit of a highlight on it, so we can tell that egg's over there. And then our orange one is coral shell and white. And we're going to go along this edge and the top of the egg. Alright, then on all of them we'll come back with just white, and I think again I will go to my liner brush. Orange one here. Alright, I think I'm going to come in on all my eggs and add just a final little brighter highlight on them. Kind of pop them out just a little bit more. Okay, I think that's going to finish out our eggs and our tulips. Our basket and our bow is done. So we're going to move over to these other elements. I think we're going to finish the leaves in around our flowers. We'll go down to the pot and we'll do the chicken and the bees last, and then we have some grasses that we're going to put in around the bottom. So our leaves are going to be next. Alright, I've drawn some lines on here to kind of show you the separation of my leaves. If you need to put your pattern lines back on, how you separate them are going to be just fine. But we're going to get ready to shade on these leaves. So we're going to shade with avocado. So first we want to separate all of our leaves and define those areas. So this leaf is on top of that one, and then this one is on top of this one. So we can see which one is on top now. And then we're going to darken here. This one is behind that one just a little bit and goes down into the flower pot. So we've kind of established those leaves. course, they're all going to be kind of dark at their bases. We have this leaf here, and then this one. I'm just kind of outlining some of the leaves here so we can see where they are. So we've got one. This one's back here behind this tulip, behind these other two leaves. Going next to the tulips, so that'll help push the tulip more out in front. So now we can kind of see where all of our leaves are. Okay, so I'm going to take that same color. That's my brush because I picked up paint on the wrong side of my bristles. Just one corner is all we're using. And I'm going to create my center vein. Just a soft little line down these to the center of these leaves here. Use the water edge if you need to thin it or smooth it out. Okay, I think we established pretty much all of the center areas. So I want to repeat the shading with this avocado. And we can do a little bit smaller area with this. Just tuck it into our really deep areas. A little bit around this ribbon here. Small amounts of paint here. Don't get carried away. We're just redefining all of our shadowy areas or dark areas. And if this is not dark enough, we can add a little bit of burnt umber into it and get some really dark values into the darkest areas. But I think overall we're going to be okay with this first one. And now we want to add some highlights in here, and that will really determine if we need to add some darker shadows. Okay, so we can take a damp brush and remove our lines that we put on there, get them out of the way. And now we are going to highlight, and I'm going to see how the pistachio mint looks as a highlight for these. It might be too chalky. I might have to go with some foliage green and yellow mixed, but let's see how this looks. Yeah, let's grab a little bit of cad yellow and foliage green. Alright, I'm mixing cad yellow and foliage green, probably a little bit more cad yellow than foliage green. Let's see how this is going to look. Okay, that's much better. I like that. And then we're just going to define all of the light edges of everything. I have an equal mix. I might have just a tiny bit more yellow than I have green, but it's pretty close to an equal mix. Not a lot of paint. Okay, I think that's looking pretty good. A little bit right there. I think that's pretty much established our light values. So I think I'll come back with a little bit of cad yellow and a tiny bit of white mixed in there for our brightest highlight, and then I can really determine the darker, where I need to place a darker value. I think I'm going to need just a little bit of darker value in here for my shading. So let's add a equal mix of cad yellow and snow white for a bright highlight. Okay, so we're just going to add this on here. This is that equal mix, cad yellow and white. Okay, so now we can really tell where we need to put our darkest green value. So I'm going to take my avocado and some burnt umber, and we're going to mix those together, make a really dark green out of it, and we're going to tuck this in where we need some really dark stuff. It won't be everywhere. I do want it a little bit along down here at the bottom. And then we need to make our stems for our tulips, because our tulips need to be coming from somewhere. So that was our darkest green value right there, which was the avocado and a little bit of burnt umber mixed in there. Okay, that looks really good. So let's take our round brush and we're going to do avocado for our stems. And just pull from, just make a little end right there. And just pull it in to our flowers. And this one I'm going to let go behind there. I'm going to grab a little tiny bit of yellow and put a little highlight on those. And I think that will take care of our stems. They don't need any more detail than that. So now we're going to go down and work on our flower pot here. Alright, let's start on a flower pot here. I am going to shade with some Georgia clay. Go up to underneath the pot. I want to go along the bottom. And I really want to make this pretty wide on here. So I grabbed a angle brush where I could get a bigger area covered. And this is a 1/2 inch angle. So we're going to begin our shading there. I'm going to come underneath, wipe a little bit of that off, and grab some water. Come underneath, go along this edge, and I want underneath here to be dark, and then a little bit along this edge. So we should have basically the center area of the pot that remains the original color that we base coated it, which was that mix of Tangelo and I don't remember what I mixed it with now. Flower pot, Tangelo, and Moon Yellow. So that was our base color there. So we've got our first shading on there of just burnt umber, okay? Not burnt umber, Georgia clay. I'm going to be calling that that orange color, burnt orange, this whole video, but it is Georgia clay. Georgia clay, Georgia clay, Georgia clay. Just so you know, it's Georgia clay. So I want that to dry, and then we're going to repeat it, but we're going to add a little bit of burnt umber into the mix. Okay, so I want to darken that. We're going to take our Georgia clay. Oh, got it right that time. I'm surprised. Oh, good lordy. And some burnt umber. Let's mix those together. Get this dark, dirty orange color. And we're going to repeat that shading on here. I'm going to turn it up because pulling towards me is much easier than going away from me. Go along the bottom, up to that corner. That's a V, so let's round that out. Anytime you have a V, you need to round it out. And we'll go up to the edge of the pot. I want to clean that edge just a little bit. I'm going to go next to the chickadee here. A little bit more water in my brush. Ooh, a lot of paint. There. Underneath this leaf just a little. So if it's too wide, take your water edge of your brush and clean that up. So let's go underneath our rim here, and we're going to come down this edge. We don't want it to be as wide as the other edge. A little bit more water. And down through here. A little bit more paint, less water. And take my finger and kind of touch that back. I don't want it to be crazy super bright. And I think I'll bring this out just a little bit more here. You can make it look more textured like a clay pot just by putting in your paint and tapping and letting those irregularities show up on the pot. Just a little tippy tapping makes it look a little bit more like a clay pot. Okay, and you can make yours a little more on the red side. I wanted mine a little bit more on the orange side, but you can certainly go with a red. So we want to start adding some highlights on here, and I think I'm going to start with some moon yellow on this. Actually, I'm going to start with some antique gold. So I like to do this with a little bit older brush. I want to use it dry. I'm going to load it with some antique gold. Offload onto a dry paper towel. And then I'm just going to begin dry brushing or rubbing it down the area I want to have a highlight. And antique gold won't show up a whole lot at first. So I'm going to do it twice here. Down the center. I'm going to wipe the brush out. No need to clean it. Then I'm going to go into some moon yellow. Do the same thing. Load my brush, offload it. Now this will start showing up a lot more. And I'm just going to dry brush down through here. Okay, I'm going to repeat that. Grab just a tiny bit of white and mix in. So we'll do more, probably 3 moon yellow, 1 white. Load my brush, offload it, and see how much lighter it is than the previous color I put on. So when you're rubbing it out of your brush, you should be able to see a value difference there. And then we'll put this kind of down the center for our brightest little highlight on there. We'll probably come back and do just some white on there. I think what I'm going to do is take some of my antique gold and maybe a little bit of moon yellow mixed in with that. And bring this out just a little bit over here. And keep that brightest area right there in the center. Okay, so I'm going to let that dry. I might come in and add I might tap just a little bit of white in there. I've already washed my brush out, so it's wet now. So I want to try and get some of the moisture out and just get a little bit of white on the corner of my brush. And tap maybe just a little bit more. Put a little bit of a bright highlight on there. If anything ever gets too bright, you can always come back with some Tangelo orange and wash over this and bring it back to the orange. But now I want to shade underneath that edge there. And I want to use that Georgia clay and burnt umber mix. And I want to go underneath. I definitely want to separate. There I go, putting paint on the wrong side of my brush. Okay, I'm going to try that again. Definitely want to separate this a little bit more. And maybe just a scooch bit of darkness. Oh, you'd probably like to be on camera, huh? Down here in this corner. Okay, I think that's going to finish off our flower pot nicely. You can come along the lip up here and also put a little bit of a highlight if you want. Kind of like that. Set those edges off a little bit more. That was just with a tiny, tiny bit of white. That's going to fade down in there a lot. Put a little reflective light over here maybe. But nothing too big, too bright, too bold. Okay? And I think that will finish up the flower pot just beautifully. So now we're ready to do our little chickadee. Okay, so I am not really a bird animal type of painter, so let's cross our fingers that when I'm done, this looks like a little chick. Oh, good Lord. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm going to get my pattern all over so I can see how I separated the body parts. And I'm going to get some antique gold out. And I'm going to side load my antique gold. And you know what? I think first I'm going to finish off the beak and the feet, because when I start adding the details on the little baby chick, then I will bring some color over on these areas. So this is the Georgia clay. I'm just shading a little bit on the beak and the feet next to the body. At the back of the beak and underneath the line for the bottom beak. So where it separates, where that line is right there. Okay, I'm just going to wipe my brush off and grab some cad yellow. Work that into my brush. It's going to blend a little bit with some of that orange that I had in there. And we'll put some of this out here on our little duck feet. And if you don't like the way your duck feet look when you start adding some grasses, that's a good place to put some grasses. So we got our little beak and feet, and I'm just going to add a little bit of a highlight on the beak. And I don't know if they have a little nostril thing on them or not, but why not? A little bit of burnt umber, little dot right there. Okay, so now let's go back to our antique gold and start working on our bird. Alright, so its head is here, so I want to just start creating some jagged little shadowy areas to define kind of where the head is. And we'll come back and highlight over that later. This is antique gold, and then the wing is here. And it comes down here and kind of works its way up through here. So we're just kind of giving the illusion of some stuff here. And we can kind of go around the eye just a little bit. And I think I'll put some of this antique gold back here. Just a couple places. This is just to start showing us where we're going to go with our other colors. Okay, so I'm just going to stay with the flat brush and do a little bit of scrubbing motion. I don't want this to be a stressful thing for you, so I'm going to get my moon yellow and my white, and I'm going to mix them on my brush. We might take just a touch of that antique gold and go around the beak here, just the bottom underneath of the beak. Okay, so back to our moon yellow and antique gold. We'll see how this is going to work. I'm doing an equal mix here, and then I want to start adding in our little highlights on here. Just, and again, I'm just scrubbing this in. I don't have a ton of paint on my brush, so don't load your brush up with tons of paint. We're just kind of scrubbing in some little stuff. I do want to give the look of a little bit of, maybe a little bit of the moon yellow and a little bit of some feathery type stuff. We don't want the head to just be a flat round head. We want to add a little bit of kind of stuff coming off of it. On the beak as well. Can bring some over, and then down the front we can start, just give it a little bit of jagged stuff. This is with moon yellow here, our base color. We had to wait till we got everything painted in before we could come and start adding any details onto our little chickie here. Alright, I'm going to go into some cad yellow because I really want that to be brighter. I want this little chickie to be a little bit brighter. So right now I'm just doing cad yellow over that moon yellow that I just put on. Just put it here, there, and everywhere on the body. So we're starting to get that cute little baby chick look on here. Okay, so we've kind of defined the head and the wing. So we know where each part is now. So now we can start adding the fun details. So just some white. Let me add a little bit of water to my paint. And we'll just add some little teeny tiny, these are tiny little dabs or strokes. Oops, not that. Kind of going around the eye, back of the head. And then just, let's just start creating some brighter areas. I really don't know what baby. Maybe I should get a picture of a baby chick. That might be helpful, huh? And then we'll add some little bit longer strokes here on the where the wing is. We're definitely going to come back in and shade underneath that wing a little bit, and then a few more little white strokes back here. Teeny tiny. These are tiny little strokes, little dabs. Tippy toe of your brush with your paint having inky consistency is the best way to get these. If your paint isn't flowing, then you need to add a little bit more water. I think that little chick is looking super cute. So I want to reshade the antique gold very lightly. So a lot of water in my brush and not very much paint. I want to define the wing here again. Maybe not up that high. Okay, it's a little wing kind of right there. You can put a little bit back underneath here if you want, around the eye. Lower part of the beak, we don't want it on the top of the beak. And I think I'll put a little bit down here. Just some antique gold. Put the wing shape kind of back in there. And I can come back in with a few more strokes and kind of define that wing a little bit more. Okay, let's add the eye. And actually, before we do that, I'm going to put some of this antique gold under the wing onto the chest here. And bring that, kind of separate that a little bit more. So we have the chest there that is the brightest. And I can add a few more little white strokes in there. Okay, I think this little chickie is looking cute. So let's add an eye on this little baby chick. So for the eye, I'm going to paint it in with some burnt umber. And I think I'm going to highlight on maybe the feet one more time. I think the beak looks alright, but I think the feet need another highlight. Alright, so I am not using black anywhere in this design, so I didn't want to bring black into the bees. So hopefully this will turn out okay. So I've taken my burnt umber and mixed a little bit of avocado to it to make the burnt umber more opaque, because it's not as opaque as what I would like. And so this is what I'm going to use for my bees. I'm going to put a little bit on the top and a little bit out here, or a lot out here. And then I'm just going to create some lines on my bee here, and I will definitely be repeating to make it darker, but I have 3 bees on here, so I'm putting some at the head and some at the back, and then a couple of lines, just wiggly lines in between. We don't need tons of detail to these little bees. Turn this one upside down here. So we'll put some at the head, a little at the back here, and then a couple of wiggly lines on the body. Okay? So I'm going to come back and do this one. This is a skinny little bee here. I needed to fatten him up a little bit. I'm just going to come back and go over these lines, make them look darker. And by the time we get done, you won't know that this is brown. It's all the illusion. Okay? So I want some little bitty antenna in here. Now you could use an Identi-Pen if you want black in your project and do it with an Identi-Pen, but I am not going to do that. I want some little antenna in here, so I'm going to go to a detail liner, within my paint to inky consistency, that brown mix that we have, and we'll just give some tiny little antenna on here. Don't make them great big, just little bitty. Little bitty antenna. Okay. Looking cute so far. Loving it. Okay, I want to make some wings on here. I want them to be transparent. I don't want them to be real noticeable. I'm not going to draw them on here because I just don't want you to see them that much. And if I draw the lines on there, once I put paint on there, then the wings are on there. So I want to come in and take my white paint, and I'm going to mix a little bit of the Blue Haven with it, just a tiny bit. Maybe. Try that again. Paint squirting out everywhere. Okay, a little bit of Blue Haven with some white, because I want to be able to see them, and so I'm just going to paint some wings in here. I don't think we're going to be able to see those though, so a little bit more paint. I'll make them a little bit more opaque. I want them to be a little more transparent, but I don't think that's going to happen. So just a couple of little ovals for the front and back wings. Definitely not going to be able to see those, so I might have to do something else with those. I'm going to think about it. I'm going to go ahead and paint the other ones in. Just a couple of ovals on each side of the body. I want to put these on before I add any more detail onto the bee itself. Not that it's going to get a lot more detail, but okay, those wings are very, very pale blue because I use Blue Haven and white to put it on. Let me see if I can zoom in close enough for you to actually see the wings on any of the bees. So you can see they're very, very, very light. So let me do a little bit more on the bee's body. I want to take the cad yellow and a little bit of white and mix that together and make a little lighter yellow. Put down the center of the body. This is going to highlight the body. This is a long, skinny little bee over here. Okay, I'm going to wash my brush out and get just white and do that down, a little dabbing down the body for a highlight. Okay, I think I'm going to have to outline my wings or do something. I need this to be a little more pointy here. I think I will outline my body just a little bit. I have just a small amount of paint. I'm up on the very tip toe of my brush. I want to get the form. My paint is that inky paint. But I don't want a lot of, see, that has too much moisture in my brush. You have too much moisture and it's just going to bleed and spread. So we just want a little bit of an outline here. color and do this one. I am barely letting that brush touch that surface. I mean, up on the tiniest line of that brush, because this is really a pretty big brush, but it's got a really long tip on it, so I can get nice fine lines. So let me see if I can go around these wings without making them ginormous. So we can see the wings just a little bit. I don't want, you know, tons of detail on these wings, so I'm just barely going to outline them. Just so we know they're there. If your blue is showing up just fine on your background, then you probably don't want to do this. Alright, I'm going to put a little bit of a highlight on those wings with some white. Just let it look like they're reflecting some of that light as well. Okay, so we want some little bee trails going around the piece. So again, this is where you can be super creative. I'm going to take that brown that we used on the bee, inky consistency, so you can get some nice flow, a small detail brush, or a brush where you can get up onto a really tiny tip, and we're just going to create like the bee flew this way. Kind of thing. You do not have to add this. This is something I just thought would be really fun. So okay, one more bee. Let's add a little trail of, hope I had you on camera for the other ones. These are little bitty lines. Don't let them get too awful big. Okay, and it can go wherever you want it to go. Just have fun with it. You can, when we put the lettering up there, you can put one in the lettering. I feel like we have more open area over here, so we could add another one over here as well. So now we need to add the grasses underneath. So we're going to grab our greens out, which is avocado. I want to start with that one. And then we can put a little bit of cad yellow, foliage green onto them. We don't have to add tons of detail on here. And then we're going to move on to our lettering. So I'm just going to take my round brush and I'm just going to make some little clusters of grass. Again, you want your paint to be a little bit thinner, have some flow to it, so we can make some fun little grasses coming around. And again, you can be the judge of where they go. Like, I really don't like this chickie's foot here, so I'm going to put some grass coming up there. I want my basket to be setting in some grass, so put some clusters of grass around it. And bury where they go. You don't want them all in a row. This is just our first little, let's put some up around this. This egg is definitely setting in some grass, so let's put some grasses here. And around our little flower pot, we'll have some grass stuff going on. Just have a little bit of fun. You're just flicking the brush, the very tip of the brush, so you can get some grasses going this way and that way, and having a little bit of movement and you know, shorter grasses, longer grasses, whatever you want. If you want your grasses to be a little bit longer, then just flick them up a little bit harder when you're making them, and you can make some longer grasses. Stay up on the very tip of your brush. That is going to help a lot. I think I want a few longer ones here in front of my Okay, so that was with the avocado. I think that turned out pretty good. So now we're just going to add some lighter colors onto these grasses, a little bit of shading underneath everything, and we'll move on to the lettering. All right, I'm going to add some foliage green strokes on here as well. So we want to add some lighter colors in here. Ooh, that's a big fat one. Just gives us a variance of color for our grasses, so they're not all one-dimensional. It doesn't have to be just on the clusters you've already done. You can create some more clusters of just this color out somewhere. A little bit of water in my paint, a little bit more so I can flow. If it's not flowing, you are not, you don't have enough water. So just get some more water and work some into that paint. And then you can come in with, if you want, a few pistachio mint in here for even a little bit more grasses and dimension. Let's see if I'm going to like, not pistachio mint, let's do, yeah, pistachio mint. I was right. I will get there because it's a really light green. So let me see if I'm even going to like this color. Yeah, we can put just a few of these. This will give us a little highlight in here. You could add cad yellow as well if you prefer. This pistachio mint is going to work out fine. A little bit more water in it. I want my grasses to have a little bit more movement to them, not just be so just coming straight up. So when you're flicking your brush, give it a little twirl or twist, you know, like you're writing a letter or something, and that will help the tip go in a different direction. Okay, I think we're looking pretty good here. So we're going to shade underneath our grasses here. So those look more springy for grasses. So we're going to shade. I'm going to take avocado and mix a little bit of burnt umber with it. I want this to be a washy thin color. Okay, so I want to make sure I add enough water to make this a nice watery float. I've got an angle brush, and I'm just going to scrub this, wipe a little bit off. I want it to go underneath my elements, and then under my grassy areas. Just a little bit more here. Ooh, that's a lot. Take your water edge if you get a little bit too much. And then we can just kind of bring some of this out and around. Let's make a little bit of darkness. Not on my chicky, but kind of around. Pull it down. A lot of water in my brush so I can make the sheer little layers of this. Okay, I'm going to wide angle out so we can look at it from a distance. And that is looking pretty good. And just keep going with this until you feel like everything looks really good down here, the way that you want it to look. Really super cute. And then we're going to work on our lettering up here at the top. Now, there's a couple ways that you can do this. Our lettering can be hand painted on, which I love hand painted lettering. So put it up here where you think you will like it. But I do have a stencil that was made just with this lettering right here that I'm going to use at the top. So I'm going to grab my stencil and figure out what colors we want to paint in this fun little Easter design. And then we're going to add some color on the edges out here. I want to keep it all very Eastery and bright, and so let's grab our stencil first. Okay, I've got my stencil taped in place. Now this is just my test stencil. This is one of my stencils, but this is my test one that I keep for myself. So yours is out of much better stencil material if you order it. But it has egg shapes on here if you want to use different egg shapes in your basket. Some flowers, some little bunnies, different sizes and shapes of bunnies, and some different words on here. It's a fun, and a little basket down here. So, you know, you can have a lot of fun with this stencil. It's a fun one. So I've placed my stencil up here because you can see my words are not together on my stencil, but that's okay because I have my line drawing. So I laid my line drawing over my basket, and I knew where my happy needed to be. And so I've got it right here. Hopefully I am straight and ready to go. So I think I'm going to stencil my word happy in with purple. So I'm going to use wisteria. Now if you're painting by hand, just use a round brush to fill in these letters. They're block letters, so you can just outline and fill in. So I'm starting with wisteria, and I'm going to apply this. My brush is straight up and down, circular motion. Whoop. See, my A is loose or messed up there. I'm not really sure which. So I'm going to try and get it back where it needs to be and work around it. And I have taped off. Let me hold that in place. I have taped off the whole upper edge and any other part of my stencil that is close to this because I don't want to get paint anywhere out here. So you want to tape off all areas where you are afraid you'll get paint. Okay, so that is my wisteria. I think I'll put a little bit more on here. You don't need much on your brush. I have dry paper towel so I can remove the excess. I'm going to grab my Purple Rain. I think I'm going to put a little bit of that at the bottom of this. Same brush. And I'm going to tap this along the bottom of my letters. And just give them a little bit more fun fun stuff. I want to repeat that because I want it to be a little bit darker. I'm going to grab a smaller stencil brush. Okay, I'm going to grab some white on my smaller stencil brush. And I want to tap this in on the top of my letters. And I'm going to repeat my Purple Rain on the bottom. Just tap that in my white. That wasn't very good. And we'll tap along the bottom again for our letters. And then take our white and tap that along the top. And hopefully when I take the stencil off, this will look similar to an ombre effect. I'll wipe my white brush out and grab a little bit of that wisteria and tap here and see if I can blend all those colors nicely together. So if you're doing this by hand where you're painting it, you'll float the Purple Rain along the bottom and float the white along the top. And that's how you'll do it. Alright, let's see if I can get this stencil off without tearing it, because this is not a very thick stencil. So there's Happy. I'm not sure it's straight. I am going to do a drop shadow around that, so I'm not too worried about it. So I'm going to get my word Easter lined up. I need to let my Happy get dry. I'll get Easter lined up and get it taped off, and then we'll come back and paint it in. Okay, I'm ready to do my word Easter. I've got it taped on here. Hopefully my words will be straight when I'm done. I'm going to base it in with the blue Haven. I'm going to load my brush a couple of times with it to try and get some of that purple out of my brush. And then I'm going to go in here and very gently apply a first layer of blue on here. Taped off all the areas that I don't want to be seen. Load my brush, offload, a little circular motion, soft pressure. And this blue's pretty light, so I'm going to do it one more time. I'm not doing heavy, thick layers here. These are all very, very light layers. Alright, so I'm going to put, let me just pounce a little bit of that. That one looks like it's not getting covered. I might try this and do one more layer. Okay, I'm going to remove the excess paint from my brush and grab some Blue Harbor. And I'm going to do the same thing that I did over here. Dark on the bottom of my letters. Just tapping it on. And then my small brush with white for the top. Tap, tap, tap. And of course I want to repeat both of those. Along the bottom, and then along the top with the white. Okay, now I'm going to remove as much of the white as I can and grab that blue on this small brush. And let me tap and blend these colors together. Give it kind of that ombre look. Okay, let's remove the stencil. See if we're straight. Fairly straight. Okay, and I know it's hard to see some of the letters right there, but don't worry. I'm going to do a drop shadow around all of these. And I'm going to do it with burnt umber. That was our color that we used a lot of. First, I'm going to connect my gaps in my letters. This one should be white up here. Okay, and then white. I missed part of my E here. Okay, here we go. Connect these letters. And I'm missing a little bit of my T here. Not really sure how I did. Oh, I must have had tape over that letter. That's what it looks like. A piece of my tape got up a little too high, so I'll just put that in. Okay. Alright, let me get my burnt umber out. And I'm going to use it to do the drop shadow here, or to outline our letters. Burnt umber is what we used. No, we used sable brown in the background. But burnt umber we've used throughout our design here, and I think it will be a good color to outline our letters with. So I'm going to go on the left side of each letter. And that got a little bit wide, so I'm going to clean that.
Here's a Little Bit by Nellie and Florida Georgia Line.
Okay, this is our burnt umber that I'm going to outline or create a drop shadow with on the left side of all of my letters. I might have to go to a smaller brush. Let me grab a little bit smaller brush here. Okay, so I'm going down the left of each side. I think I'm also going to go along the bottom. So that means through here. No, I won't be going anywhere. Okay, so let's do this one. I'm going to go along this edge. And then up here we'll have a little bit. Then this one's going to start directly across from that one and go along this inside edge, or outside edge. And then we'll have some here. And then a little bit here and under. So that's how we're going to do all of our letters. I think that's going to look really good. You could outline them completely if that helps you see them better. Okay, I've outlined all my letters on the left and lower edges of the letters. I feel like my purple and my blue needs to be darker. So I'm going to float a little bit of purple on those and a little bit of blue on the blue ones. And I'm going to give you a tip about when you outline letters, when you do a drop shadow here in just a second. So I'm just floating a little bit of this purple just to give those letters a little bit more weight. And now I'm going to do the blue ones. These letters are much thinner, so I have to be careful that I stay within the letter. And so I'm up on the toe of the brush quite a bit here. The blues seem to get pretty dark when I stenciled it, so it didn't need a whole lot. And I'm going to go over the tops with white. I feel like that needs to be bright, and I'm going to have hardly any water in my brush so that I can get some nice bright highlight on here. I don't want the water to thin my paint down. And do my other letters over here. Again, these are narrower letters, so I want to stay up on the tip of my brush when I'm adding this highlight on here, brightening this highlight. And I could go back to my round brush and do this as well. That would probably be a lot easier to use the round brush to do this. Okay, so that's going to finish out my letters. Now, the tip that I want to give you on your letters, when you are doing a drop shadow and you have curved letters, areas where, you know, like here. So with my A here, let me zoom in. When you're creating your shadow, this one starts, and directly across from it, this one starts. So that one should end. It could be a little bit thinner right there and just kind of fade away, and then you'll start thin here and work it down, okay? The same over here on my E. Actually, that could come over just a tiny bit further on the top of that letter and be a little bit thinner. And so this will start directly across from it. Okay, the same here on my S. I started up here really thin and then let it get wider as it came down the letter, and then the inside of this one started directly across from where that one started. Okay, so they should be directly across from each other when you're doing them. Here on my E and my T, it stopped here and this one stopped here, so they're directly across from each other. So that's a really, I think, helpful tip when you are doing lettering to know what to do. So the last thing we need to do to this is to put some color around the outside border of this. And again, I want it to stay a fun, Eastery piece. So I am going to float around this with let's see. Well, we could use our burnt umber and tie it all in that way. You know, because we have burnt umber here, and just bring it all together. We could use our sable brown, which is not as dark as burnt umber. So I might use the sable brown and try it first. And if I want it darker, then I can add some burnt umber on my next float. But this is the color we used in the background, and then we put the whitewash over on top of it, which really makes this look like a custom background. Well, it is a custom background, but it looks like a piece of scrapbook paper that we just whitewashed over, which you can do that as well. I absolutely love this background on this. So we are going to shade around the outside edge of our piece. Okay, so what do I do with it? Here we go. I'm going to use a dampen artist sponge with this. So I filled it with water, and I'm going to put it in my paper towel and wring out the excess moisture. We want a little bit of moisture in there, so just in case I get it too dry, I'm going to put a little bit of water on my palette here so I can grab water. I'm going to use just an edge of this and get some of that sable brown on there, just a little bit. I do want a little bit of water because I want it to be a nice thin wash of color here. Let me move my easel. And we're going to take this and put it on the outside edge. So we just have a little bit on there. I'm going to put it on and buff it to where it almost goes away. I can use any side of my sponge to do this, and we're going to go all the way around this surface, and I'm just going to do a little bit at a time. I have done many of my projects this way, and I really love the look. I want a little bit more water, keep it a little bit softer color. And just work your way around it. And we'll do the whole edge. Like this. A little bit more water. And the more water you use, the lighter it will be, obviously, and it will fade down in there. So, you know, start out light, don't get too dark, and then you can always come back and add more. Okay, I'm going to flip my sponge over so I can smooth that. I had a lot of water. Smooth that out a little bit. Over here and do a little bit of smoothing. You can remove it while it's still a little wet. So I want my corners to be a little bit darker. And I think that's looking pretty good. So I'm going to let that dry and see if I want to apply any more on here. And I think that's looking pretty good right now. I think it looks really good, but I think I want it to be just a tiny bit darker. So I'm going to get a little bit of burnt umber. And just see if I can scuff up the edges a little more. Make it look a little more playful and rustic. And just a tiny bit of paint. Don't get carried away here. There, I think that frames that out nicely. You can do that or not do it. You can pick another color within the project and use that color. I think that would be just fine as well. But isn't that the cutest little sign to hang on your front door? I love it. I'm not sure my lettering is straight on mine, so make sure you get your lettering straight. My Easter looks like it's tilted a little bit. But I think it turned out beautiful. Love the colors. Really, really enjoyed painting this project. And I hope that you have a good time painting it as well. I feel like right across there needs a little bit of a highlight. So I'm going to grab a little bit of white and a little bit of my sable brown, because that's what I have left on my palette, and put a little bit of a highlight across here. Just brighten that a little bit. Okay, that makes me a little happier. A little bit more of this. This is mostly white now on here. And I think we've got a fun little project. And like I said, you can decorate your eggs any way that you want to decorate them. I was just trying to think of something quick and fun, but I want you to create those eggs the way that you want them. So thank you so much, everyone, for painting with me on this project. I have thoroughly enjoyed painting this. It's been a really fun one for me to paint. So I hope that you all enjoyed it. Give me a thumbs up if you like this piece. And please comment and share and subscribe to my channel. I appreciate you all. Have fun painting this. I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks so much, everybody. Bye-bye.